We tend to think of the apocalypse as a singular event, a fiery end that awaits us in the distant future. But what if I told you the world has already ended once? What if the architecture of our modern society, our weapons, our vanity, our science, and even the way we look at the stars, was not invented by human ingenuity, but was actually a contagion, a forbidden virus uploaded into our consciousness by entities that were never meant to touch the soil of Earth? Most religious texts gloss over the details of the era before the Great Flood, painting it as a time of vague wickedness. But buried in the dusty, forbidden archives of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church lies a text that dates back to 300 BC, a manuscript that was nearly erased from history because it revealed too much. It is called the Book of Enoch, and it doesn't just tell us that angels exist, it tells us that they defected. It tells us that the monsters under our bed are real, and that beneath the crust of our planet, in a prison of jagged stones and absolute darkness, the architects of human corruption are still waiting, screaming in a silence we cannot hear. But before we descend into that abyss, you need to understand one terrifying truth. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled wasn't convincing the world he didn't exist. It was convincing us that the knowledge we cherish, the very tools we use to build civilizations, was a gift, when in reality it was a weapon designed to destroy us from the inside out. Long before the rain began to fall, the world was watched. The Book of Enoch introduces us to a class of angelic beings known as the Watchers, or the Grigori. These were not the harp-playing cherubs of Renaissance paintings. These were cosmic sentinels, beings of immense power and intellect, tasked by the Creator to observe the burgeoning human race from the silence of the heavens. They were meant to be silent guardians, separate and holy. But the text describes a slow, creeping corruption that didn't start with hate, but with desire. From their high stations, the Watchers looked down and saw the daughters of men. They saw a vitality and a raw, chaotic beauty that the sterile perfection of heaven lacked. The leader of this angelic garrison was an entity named Samyaza. He stands as a tragic, almost Shakespearean figure in the mythology, because he was not blindly evil, he was weak. On the summit of Mount Hermon, a place that would become ground zero for a cosmic rebellion, Samyaza confessed his darkened heart to his 200 subordinates. He knew that crossing the boundary between the divine and the mortal was a capital offense against the Creator. He told them that he feared he alone would pay the price for this great sin. But the corruption had already spread through the ranks. The other angels, driven by lust and a rebellious curiosity, pressured him. They swore a blood oath, binding themselves together with a curse, ensuring that they would all fall together. And fall they did. 200 stars descended onto Mount Hermon, shedding their celestial glory to take human wives, initiating a biological and spiritual contamination that would shatter reality. This union was not just about physical desire. It was an exchange of forbidden data. The Watchers didn't just sleep with human women. They educated them. And this is where the story shifts from mythology to a haunting reflection of our own history. While Samyaza may have been the leader, the true architect of humanity's downfall was a Watcher named Azazel. If Samyaza was the politician, Azazel was the arms dealer. The text explicitly states that Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He introduced the metallurgy of war. Before this moment, humanity struggled against nature. After Azazel, humanity struggled against itself. He weaponized the human race. But he didn't stop at violence. He corrupted the soul through vanity. He taught humanity about beautifying the eyelids, the use of precious stones, and the alchemy of dyes. It implies that the art of deception, of altering one's appearance to seduce and manipulate, was an angelic technology. Other watchers followed suit, teaching sorcery, root-cutting, astrology, and the reading of the stars. They unlocked the secrets of the universe, nuclear physics of the spirit, before the human moral compass was developed enough to handle it. The result was not a golden age, but a descent into absolute chaos. The consequences of this unnatural union were immediate and grotesque. The women who had laid with the Watchers gave birth, but not to human children. They birthed the Nephilim. These were the giants, genetic hybrids of angelic fire and mortal clay. The ancient texts describe them as consuming the labor of all men, insatiable, distinct biological horrors that grew to impossible sizes. When the crops failed and the livestock was depleted, the Nephilim turned their hunger toward humanity itself. They began to devour people, drinking blood, and finally turning on each other in a frenzy of cannibalistic violence. Imagine the terror of early man, living in the shadow of demigods who saw them as nothing more than cattle. The earth screamed under the weight of this bloodshed. The corruption was total. It wasn't just that people were being killed. It was that the very DNA of life on earth had been hacked by a celestial intervention that God had never authorized. High above this slaughter, the four great archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, looked down from the sanctuary of heaven. They saw the earth awash in blood, and heard the cries of the dying rising up to the gates of the throne. They approached the Creator, laying out the indictment against the Watchers, specifically targeting Azazel for revealing the eternal secrets of heaven, and Samyaza for breaking the laws of nature. The divine response was swift, surgical, and terrifyingly permanent. The era of observation was over. The era of judgment had begun. God did not send an army. He sent executioners with specific targets. He commanded Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot. But simply killing him was too merciful. Raphael was ordered to open a jagged pit in the desert of Dudael, a region of the underworld, and cast Azazel into it. He was instructed to throw sharp, rugged stones onto the fallen angel and cover him with darkness, ensuring he would never see the light again until the final day of burning judgment. This specific punishment for Azazel highlights the severity of his crime. He who taught men to forge steel was buried beneath the crushing weight of the earth. For the Nephilim, the hybrid abominations, the punishment was psychological warfare. God commanded the archangel Gabriel to incite a civil war among the giants. He turned them against one another so that they perished by mutual slaughter. Samyaza and the other Watchers were forced to stand by, paralyzed, and watch as their beloved sons butchered each other until not one remained. Only after witnessing the extermination of their bloodline were they bound in chains. The text says they were imprisoned in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations, waiting for the final judgment where they will be cast into the abyss of fire. But the story gets even stranger when we look at the role of Enoch himself. In a twist of cosmic irony, the Watchers, now terrified and regretting their actions, petitioned Enoch, a mere human, to intercede on their behalf. They begged him to write a prayer for forgiveness and send it to God. The hierarchy had been completely inverted. The angels were asking a man for help. Enoch obliged, But the answer he received in a vision was a door slamming shut. He was told to go back to the Watchers and deliver the most chilling verdict in history. You have no peace. They who had once dwelt in the holy station of heaven, who were immortal and spiritual, had defiled themselves with the flesh, and for that there would be no redemption. Enoch was then taken on a tour of the cosmos, a journey that reveals where these entities are currently kept. He describes a place that is neither heaven nor earth, a chaotic void where 7 stars, like great burning mountains, are rolled together. His guide, Uriel, tells him this is the prison of the angels, a place where the fire burns but gives no light. In the second book of Enoch, the vision becomes even more pathetic and disturbing. In the 5th heaven, Enoch encounters the Grigori, who did not descend, but are connected to the rebellion. They are described as giant, silent figures with withered faces, suspended in a state of eternal depression. They are led by a prince named Dudael, a name that echoes the adversary, Satan, who attempted to place his throne higher than the clouds. These beings occasionally break into a pitiful, mournful song that rises to the Lord, a desperate and hollow attempt to show remorse. It creates a picture not of glorious rebels ruling in hell, but of broken, incarcerated criminals rotting in a celestial supermax prison, waiting for an execution date that has been postponed for thousands of years. So, as we stand here today, looking at a world that is once again obsessed with warfare, with vanity, with altering our genetics, and reaching for the forbidden fruits of technology, we have to ask ourselves a dangerous question. The Watchers were bound for 70 generations. Biblical scholars and mathematicians have crunched the numbers, and depending on how you calculate a generation, that timeline is either expiring soon or it expired in the early 20th century, right around the time humanity suddenly leaped into the atomic age, mastered flight, and began to paint the world with the blood of industrial warfare. Did we really discover these things on our own? Or are the whispers from the desert of Dudael getting louder? The Book of Enoch leaves us with the unsettling possibility that the Watchers are not just a myth of the past, but a looming threat of the future, waiting for the moment when the chains break and the sons of heaven return to finish what they started. The story of the Watchers forces us to confront a brutal paradox about the human condition. We are taught to fear the monsters, the demons, the corruptors, the things that go bump in the night. Yet, if you look closely at the gifts of Azazel, you realize that everything we define as civilization, complex metallurgy, advanced cosmetics, the strategies of conquest, the very sciences that allow us to dominate the planet, are the exact same sins that the angels were condemned for teaching us. We didn't reject the Watchers' corruption. We institutionalized it. We built our empires on the blueprints of hell. The irony is suffocating. We pray to God for peace, but we live by the sword of Azazel. We are not just the victims of this ancient betrayal. We are its most successful students. This ancient narrative isn't just about angels. It's a mirror for the modern soul. Think about Semyaza. He wasn't a mustache-twirling villain. He was a leader who knew the right thing to do but folded under the crushing weight of peer pressure. He sacrificed eternity for a moment of belonging. How many of us do that every single day? We compromise our morals, our health, and our truth just to fit into a culture that is visibly self-destructing. We see the Nephilim of our own making: runaway AI, environmental collapse, social division, eating the world alive. Yet we continue to feed the beast because everyone else is doing it. We are all watching the floodwaters rise, paralyzed by the same collective inaction that doomed the Watchers. So here is the choice you have to make, and it is not a theoretical one. It is a binary split in your reality. Do you continue to consume the fruit of forbidden knowledge, accelerating your life with the tools of vanity and war, hoping that technology will save you from the chaos it created? Or do you attempt to return to the silence, to the pre-industrial connection with the divine, even if it means being defenseless in a world of wolves? Do you choose the sword of Azazel or the silence of Enoch? The prison of the Watchers is leaking, and the influence of the fallen is stronger now than it has been for 5,000 years. But there is another entity we haven't discussed, a figure even more controversial than the Watchers, who sits at the center of the cosmic chessboard, waiting for the final move. If you want to survive the next chapter of this spiritual warfare, you need to understand the true nature of the abyss. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to be asleep when the 70 generations run out.